Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar entitled Accessibility 201, Relax and Create Sensory-Friendly Experiences. This is Christy Farnbaugh, and I'm the Innovation and Engagement Director for the Ohio Arts Council. My responsibilities here include planning and facilitating professional learning opportunities for the field. Webinars like this one are being offered because constituents tell us that you'd like to learn ways to do your work more efficiently and effectively. And today we have more than 35 people registered for this session, so we're all trying to learn more about being accessible in our programming. Before I introduce today's presenter, Erin Hoppe, a few technical details are necessary. First of all, everyone is in listen-only mode, or you're muted. This will help us cut down on feedback during the session. We'll use the question box in the control panel for capturing your questions for Erin. We'll do some Q&A at the end, toward the end of the hour. We'll take a poll in the beginning, get Erin a little information about who's on the call with us today, so please provide your feedback accordingly. Also, Erin's got a couple of videos she's going to show us throughout the presentation, so make sure your volume is up loud enough so you can hear those. We tested them and they worked okay, but we want to make sure your volume is turned up for that. If you miss anything, we do record these webinars and post them to our YouTube page, so you'll be able to go back and watch them at a later time. And after today's webinar, you'll receive a link to a brief survey via email. Please take 5 minutes and give us your feedback. It's really helpful that we hear from you and how we can make these webinars and our presentations more meaningful in the future. Today, we're really pleased to have Erin Hoppe with us as our presenter. Erin has more than a decade of experience as a cultural administrator, researcher, evaluator, and advocate. Erin is Executive Director of VSA Ohio, the state organization on arts and disability, where she works to make the arts and arts education more accessible and inclusive for all Ohioans. Erin holds a master's in cultural policy and arts administration from The Ohio State University and a bachelor's of arts in economics with a minor in art history from the University of California, San Diego. She was a program assistant for the Partners in Education program at the John F. Kennedy Center for Performing Arts and completed an internship for the National Endowment for the Arts Government Affairs Office and the Smithsonian Institution's Office on Policy and Analysis. And with that, I'm really pleased to introduce you to Erin Hoppe, who will present our session today. Thank you, Erin.
Thank you very much, Christy, and thanks to all of you for taking time out of a beautiful day to listen in. So we're just going to jump right into it here. So I wanted to make sure to also advance the slides. There we go. I wanted just to, in case you don't know, give a little bit of background about VSA Ohio. We are nonprofit. We are located in Columbus, downtown Columbus. We do a lot of work here, but we are statewide. Our resources and services reach across the state as much as possible. And we are an organization, we are an arts organization that works with disability. So we work across disability, and we work across the lifespan. And so we really try to encompass and address all different types of disability, and to make the arts and arts education more accessible and inclusive for those people with disabilities, and importantly, their support networks. No one is an island, and there's a lot of teamwork that goes into supporting someone with a disability, and so we want to really have something for everyone. And of course, we're also interested in really changing perceptions about what people think disability is, and what ability is, and what people with disabilities are capable of, which is just the same things as you and I and everyone else. But I am sure that if you don't know VSA, this is your first time on, you are wondering what VSA stands for. So I will tell you that it does not actually stand for anything. It's a secret. Many years ago, it stood for Very Special Arts. We were Very Special Arts Ohio, but we are part of an international organization, VSA, that was founded by Gene Kennedy Smith. And so we are part of their affiliate network. We follow their branding, and a number of years ago, they rebranded as VSA to be more progressive in their language, and thought it would be really easy to be CVS or IBM, which nobody knows what they stand for now either. But we are VSA Ohio, the state organization for arts and disability. So we're going to start off by asking you a question. It's a poll question for you that I think Christy has set up. And it's just to get a baseline here of you folks. So I think you can look down on your dashboard and pull up or check the poll section and mark what your experience with accessibility programs is. Is this all brand new to you, or have you tried a few things, or you are moving along in your process, or you're kind of an expert and you do it all the time?
Great. The votes are coming in. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. Oh, 100%. You all are awesome. Thank you so much. I'm going to close the poll. I'm going to share the results. So, Erin, I don't know if you can see that, but 27%, it's all new to me. 53%, I've tried a few things. 13%, I'm getting pretty good at it. And 7%, it's my job.
Fabulous. That means at least one or two of you, it's your job. So that's great that we have some folks that this is their dedicated work. And I think it's super exciting that there's about a third of you who this is all new to you, but you're jumping in. And I hope that for those there in the middle, you get a few tips here today that that keep pushing you forward. So I promise to do a quick overview of disability in general before we jumped into sensory. So I wanted to, for many of you, this is probably all seems, right in line with what you're thinking. But as you are making the case to other stakeholders, perhaps in your institution or in the community, your bosses, your board of directors, disability it engages new audiences. We in the cultural field have talked for a long time about underserved audiences, and that was really focused on geography and socioeconomic status and all these things. And the news is that disability crosses all of that. So we're going to welcome new people. We're going to make good business decisions. This is a huge market segment. People with disabilities, much like you and I, don't generally go places by themselves alone. And so you want to bring that whole family in, and you're really developing that network. And we really want you to see it. I used to have on this slide that it's the law, right? So of course it's the law, the Americans with Disabilities Act. If you get Ohio Arts Council funding, you check the box that says you're ADA compliant or have a transition plan. But I think that, the emphasis is really on being accessible, being inclusive is an asset to your organization. It shows that you value new and different visitors, that you want to welcome everyone. It is most likely going to address your mission or your vision or your strategic plan, because I assume a lot of you have something in there about community and welcoming and creativity and new audiences. So all of these things will be true. And so don't see this at, when people talk about it and you're responding, don't let them think that it's an onerous burden, right? It's something that's going to make everybody better. It's also the right thing to do, right? Humans have rights, and disability, like many others, is a civil rights and a social justice issue. And I would say, too, that it's selfish, right? I know that if I live long enough, or if, heaven forbid, something happens to me in my life, that I am no longer the mobile person that I am with, that I want to know that I can still go to theaters, to museums, that I can still access these places. And really, if there is a segment of the world that is most apt and most ready to welcome audiences with disabilities, it's the creative sector, right? You solve problems every day. You think outside the box. You're always adapting and working with less than what you need. And so think of it as something fun, as part of just your work, as a good challenge, and dig into it. So part of the teaser for this was that your boss is on board. Yay, that is a great thing. And I think as you're going, these are a bunch of cheesy clip art for you here today. And on the top left, the reminder is, much like everything else, you want to plan. You want to do step by step, and like that little baby on the, or toddler, I guess, on the books, you want to take baby steps. That's okay. You want to think about this, you know, in realistic and possible ways. You want to get people on board, have a plan, and when you get to the end, you want to know that, well, I should say, you should know that your short-term, long-term, and medium-term goals are going to be different than everyone else, because your institution is your own, your organization. So you don't have to compare yourself. You can get ideas from other people. And certainly in that top right corner, you know, it's a team effort, right? So you're working with people within your organization, in the community. You're finding your stakeholders and your supporters and working on this together. And I think, you know, one of the important things that I like to try to convey is that we already, as organizations and nonprofits and community spaces, hopefully we are already thinking about customer service, right? People have a lot of choices in life, and their decision to come to your space means that they should also be treated with customer service that, you know, the for-profit industry talks about so much. And so if somebody comes to you, or as you're doing this, remember that it's really just being a good customer service attitude. And if you think of it that way and not as a pain, then you'll get a lot farther. I would also like to remind folks that one size does not fit all. So we are all different people, or different reptiles, or birds, or mammals. And what works for one person will not necessarily work for another. So we're going to talk about sensory friendly and autism today. And certainly that is, you know, that's a spectrum. And what autism is for one person is not what it's like for the other. So you can make an accommodation for one person, and you might have to make a slightly different one for somebody else, particularly, like, I'm thinking of like somebody with a vision impairment. Somebody might request information in Braille, and that's great. But another person might want that information, they might just need it in large print, or they might want it digitally because that's how they access info now. So it's really a great idea to just say, if somebody says, I need X, then you say, okay, well, let's try A and B, or if not, what do you need? How can we make this work? So letting them help you problem solve. Because we all know, if you've met one person with a disability, you've met one. Just like us, I'm not like anyone else. My father was an identical twin, and he was definitely not like his brother. So we're all unique. I would like to, now comes the part where please pay attention to the volume. Don't blow out your eardrums or anything. But I'm going to share a video with you by a comedian named Zach Anner. He's a comedian, a YouTuber, a vlogger, and he happens to have cerebral palsy. And he has a really great YouTube channel. But he did this also promotional video about what it's like to be a person with cerebral palsy, what he wants you to know. So we're going to hope this works. And you are going to watch your sound, and here we go.
I'm Zach Anner, and the Cerebral Palsy Foundation asked me to help them promote the show Speechless by giving a list of my top 10 things I wish people knew about CP. I don't really know if I can come up with a list of 10 things, but I'm going to try. Okay, number 1. Just because I'm in a wheelchair doesn't mean that you can pet me like a dog. I'm not a dog, and I know it seems nice and I'm at dog height, but that doesn't make me a dog. And just because I like to pee outside sometimes, that doesn't make me a dog. And just because I won the Westminster Dog Show last year doesn't mean, oh my God. I a dog? Number 2, I think it's pronounced cerebral palsy. I don't know if cerebral is a word. Number 3, it is hard for people with cerebral palsy to make lists with their fingers, so I'm going to stop doing it. Number 4, if you ask me what's wrong with my legs, The real answer to that is nothing. I have brain damage, so that's a little bit more exciting. Cerebral palsy isn't like, oh, that means your legs don't work. Some people with cerebral palsy are walking around just fine. Number 5, just because I have cerebral palsy doesn't mean I'm inherently inspiring. I'm inspiring because I'm an author, a YouTuber, and I have the biceps of a Greek god. Number 6, even though I have cerebral palsy, I still consider myself incredibly lucky. I have a great career, I have wonderful friends, and somehow I've managed to make a living while not getting up before noon most days. Number 6.
Oh no, I've stopped it on everyone. I'm sorry. Oh no. Technology is hard. Hold tight.
Number 7, just because your grandson has cerebral palsy doesn't mean I know him, Ethel. I mean, we don't even live in the same state. Number 8, yes, I'm going to need some help with some stuff sometimes, but just talk to me like I'm a normal 31-year-old guy who spilled a carton of chocolate milk on himself. Number 9, you are welcome to pray for me if you want, but I feel like having cerebral palsy is part of the reason I'm supposed to be here, and one of the tools that I can use to help people be a little bit more compassionate and open to people with differences. So it's just, I'm working with what I got there. And number 10, and most importantly, almost everything I've said is subjective, and you should just talk to more people with CP and see what they feel about it. Because I'm not a spokesman for all people with CP. People with CP are as diverse as all of humanity. So just go out there, have a conversation, and do what you can to educate yourself. So that's about as good a list as I can come up with on the fly, and I hope you learned something today. Or nothing. I don't really care. But remember to subscribe to the Cerebral Palsy Foundation and check out ABC's Speech List premiering September 21st. I think it's at 8:30, but I don't know for sure. And if you want to check out the pilot, it's in the description there. All right, see you next time. Happy learning. Bye.
All right. So I hope that worked out. Thanks for the technical bit there. I mean, I think the things that I want you to get from that are that he's a funny guy. He's, you should really check out Workout Wednesday and also his quest for the Rainbow Bagel in New York. By Workout Wednesday, you can see how he got those biceps of a Greek god. And, some things in there about inspiration and this idea of people with disabilities being inspiring just because they have a disability. Well, let's just think about people as people, and he's funny because he's funny. So check him out. And I also bring it up because he's an artist with a disability. He's an artist that, he is using his disability as part of his artistry, but are you at your institution thinking about how people with disabilities are part of the artists that you are showing? Are they on your walls? Are they on your stages? Are they part of that process? Can we bring them in, and not in a token way, but in a real way that, recognizes talents and they happen to have a disability? So let's see if I can get to the next. Now, as you're working towards accessibility in your space, I want you to really, I ask these questions in person, at trainings, and I say, what makes you feel welcome and what makes you feel unwelcome? And, a lot of the time, the welcome side is, smiling people, clean spaces, friendly. I can find, I can park easily. I can find my way around the space. And that unwelcome is the flip side of that. It's, people are don't greet me, or perhaps it's a docent who is tailing you and following you to make sure you're not touching, or if there's a weird smell or things like that. And I bring that up because when we're talking about accessibility, we're talking about welcoming people. So the things that make you feel welcome and unwelcome will be similar for people with disabilities, and you can expand that mat, and you can open those doors by working with people to, perhaps you can, invite someone to your space to help you if you ask them, legitimately and honestly. We're not as a token, but we want to make this space welcome. Help us navigate this space and see what you think. Because the other thing that you should really do is, take inventory of what you have in your space already. Think about how that person who has all of the opportunities in the world decided to come to your theater production instead of watching it, the musical on Netflix, right? So, and that whole process that they go through, how do they find out about it? How do they get there? How do they get in the door? Well, how do they orient themselves when they arrive? What kind of people, what are the staff and volunteers like? What policies are in place that are part of the experience? What food, if you serve food in your space, what food is available? It's a small thing, but especially if you're working with the autism population, there are a number of people who have food restrictions, dietary restrictions, or dietary preferences. So having options in your space, vegetarian, maybe a gluten-free, etc. Again, that the art, are we including artists and people with disabilities as part of our presenting process? You do this yourself. You can do it with your team, with your accessibility committee, and with people with disabilities to help you see things that you probably would not see because you're so used to going to, you park, you walk 3 blocks, you go in the back, you go in the door, you go upstairs, and suddenly you're there. Well, somebody who's never been there before and who's navigating with different abilities is going to shed a lot of light on that for you. And as you're doing that, you're going to want to make sure that you have an accessibility statement. You need to draft this together as a team. And when you write it, don't just put it in a drawer, right? You want to put that on your website. You want to let people know. It's the access statement is so that people know what you will do for them. You should really very much include a specific contact. I used this example earlier of it's a little exaggerating, but if I called Ohio State and said I wanted to talk to somebody, there's about 50,000 people that I could talk to there. Obviously, we are not all that large, but having somebody who's responsible for it is going to really, increase efficiency and effectiveness because there's that one person who knows. And that person should be somebody who wants to be doing it. So you can get real brief with it. You can just, I'll show you one in a second, or you can get pretty detailed. And I want to remind you that as you are developing statements, as you are developing maybe an accessibility brochure about what's available or what you can do, keep that information with all of your other information. Don't keep it behind the desk and wait until you think you see someone who might want it. I may walk in and flip through their brochures, and maybe you don't know, but I have a brother with, with CP. And so now I have been able to find it. Putting it in the back, you don't want to be in the position of guessing if somebody wants an accessibility brochure. Just put it out, brag about it, let it be there. You can go real, real brief with your access statement, just talking about your commitment, I'm sorry, and all this pollen, and what the policies are, and then have that contact. Or I am mostly focusing on Ohio folks today, but I did want to, if you're looking for a really nice accessibility description, check out the Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh. It takes 2 clicks to find it on their website. It's got a brief statement, it has a contact, and then it goes through all of the different components of accessibility in their space. It's real nice. So the next part is really accessibility symbols, right? So use these visuals to let people know what you are offering. Visuals of all kinds are great because they allow you to not only reach people with disabilities, but also people whose English is not their first language, people who have little children who don't necessarily read yet. You want to brag about the things you're doing, so let people know. And then recruit those people, right? Find the audience members, find the volunteers, see how you can recruit interns and staff who have disabilities. Find your partner organizations, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Find those planning committee members who want to be there and partner with you to make it happen. And try to put together an accessibility committee. You'll have a lot of success if you are able to bring in multiple departments because you all look at and have different needs at your institution, so you'll all bring a different eye and question and knowledge base. And then bring in those outside community members. And it could be for a small program that you're trying, and then you could build it to be accessibility for the whole organization. I also want to show you this quick video of an artist who got into art kind of because of her disability. I had the opportunity to see her keynote speech not that long ago, but I think that the way that she talks about art and her disability is really interesting. So let's have a listen.
So I'm Jess Tom. I'm a writer and an artist and a part-time superhero. And I've just talked about the role that making creative connections has had in my life and in my artistic practice, and how it helps me form Tourette's Hero and Biscuit. So Tourette's Hero is an organisation and a superhero persona that I co-founded in 2010 with my friend Matthew Biscuit, after we had a conversation that radically changed Biscuit how I viewed my condition. And Matthew described my Tourette's as a crazy language generating machine and told me that not doing something creative with my tics would be wasteful. And that idea really took root and really shifted my thinking and was the start of us working together on an artistic project that has grown and evolved in loads of different ways. I think Biscuit being able to reflect on and think about things in different ways and challenge yourself to how you view your own experience is really relevant for everybody, whether they're a disabled person or not. But there is a particular relevance to disabled people. Lots of the way disability talked about in society is very linear and just describes it in one way. And being able to push against that and find new ways to talk about ourselves and our experience feels really critical to helping people think differently about disability and to creating more inclusive communities.
I love the way that she talks about that, about pushing back and about thinking about it not linearly and using it to tell stories, and how the arts are really unlocking a lot of different possibilities. After the keynote that I listened to, she ended up at a table with me during a session, and I have to tell you, it was one of those like celebrity encounter moments where I was like, oh, hello, you're hilarious, and now I'm just sitting next to you. Would you like to look at my laptop? She was great. Check out Tourette's Hero if you have a chance, and Zach Anner. So some of the backgrounds, we're going to go carry on now. If we got it. So just this, I've showed a couple of examples of things that are people who obviously have disabilities. But we just want to remember that, especially in what we're talking about, sensory friendly and these relaxed environments and folks, that not all disabilities are visible. There are a lot of hidden disabilities that are out there, so we don't ever want to make assumptions about people because we don't know what they're going through. We don't know, what's happening. So just remember that we all come, every day is different for everyone, and somebody may have a good day and somebody may have a bad day in your space. So now we've reminded ourselves that, let's talk a little bit about some of the components and features of autism. So certainly it's a spectrum, right? I mean, so features are completely individual and unique to different people. So it's really, focused on the social skills are impaired. There are communication challenges, also often a lot of nonverbal communication or repetitive sayings. A lot of that restricted interest, really focused on trains or anime or whatever it may be, and then therefore not being interested in other things. Repetitive behaviors, where you might see that idea of the rocking or hands moving. And then of course that sensory issue is a thing, and certainly it's it's lights and sounds and people and things like smell. We did a conference last fall for arts and autism and around accessibility, and we asked that attendees not wear cologne or scented lotion. We all know that feeling of walking past someone down the street and you're like, wow, it's like they dumped an entire bottle of cologne on. But smells can be very off-putting to people with autism as well. There's often a need for routine. So there's a lot of routine work and preparation, and sometimes it's hard to get folks with autism outside of their routine. So that's where that preparation comes in. And then there's often a lot of stress and anxiety, which comes from breaking that routine and other types of things. So if you have met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. I think by generally relaxing your space, you're going to get towards an environment that is much more welcoming to everyone. But people use terminology like high or low functioning. I want to ask you to not use that type of description to just talk, if somebody has autism, you could talk about them having autism. But it's just not really a nice way to describe someone. If you want to say, they're not verbal, then you could say they're not verbal. But the high-low functioning sort of puts someone in a box. And if you say they're low functioning in general, then people will think that they can't do anything. They're only going to be able to do A, B, and C. And maybe they can't do D, E, and F, but they could do X, Y, and Z. So just really, really be broad about that. We're talking about relaxing the environment and what sensory friendly can do, and there are some other quote unquote disabilities that have very similar features. So dementia is one of those, right? So as you're developing sensory programs, maybe also you want to, in addition to the autism community, you want to reach out to some of the older members of our community. There's these cognitive issues, behavioral issues, mood issues, things that sort of really reflect what life with autism can be like. On the same token, we can talk about post-traumatic stress disorder as something else that also has some sensory issues. There's a lot of behavioral issues that can come from it, lots of psychological, some of those flashbacks or fear, this idea that, if there's a sudden jarring sound during a performance, that could set someone off. So actually, my next slide, I found this very interesting. I found it actually just yesterday. We talk a lot about PTSD in relation to veterans and military, and certainly that is true. There's a good amount of people who are in the military who have some level of PTSD. But of this survey of 244 adults, certainly, it wasn't skewed to military or not, but there are so many other reasons here why somebody might have post-traumatic stress. Maybe they survived an assault or a trauma. Maybe they survived some sort of accident or natural disaster or something like that. So there are all kinds of reasons why somebody might have some of those stress issues. So ideas. What are we going to do? So as you are developing these sensory-friendly programs, your first line of defense is the community. So these partners listed here are focused around autism, definitely. And you want to wrap these people in. You want to learn from them. You want to have an authentic relationship with them. You want to listen to them. They are, experts. They are going to see things that you wouldn't. They are going to help ensure that your programs are stronger, and importantly, they are going to be a really strong word of mouth for you. There's a lot of, in the disability world, I may or may not go to something, but there's a lot of word of mouth and trust. If I know that my friend took their kids to X, Y, or Z, and it went really well, that they were treated and welcomed, then I'm going to go too. So look for, those people with disabilities and their families. Go professional. Find their therapist. Find different service providers or local chapters of Autism Speaks or Autism Society or whoever might be your niche audience that you're working with. Healthcare providers like hospitals and things like that, universities, they have all kinds of groups that are connected to these fields and these work, and they can all be assets to you. Down here is a picture of a group of a sensory-friendly experience at COSI, actually. There is a large number of, there is autism in the Somali community, and it's not talked about as much. So COSI worked really hard to partner with a local Somali community group, and they had a small, I think it ended up being about 40 people or so that came, but they had a really amazing experience together in a really safe space together, and found community and time for each other. So what are you going to do when you get people in your space? How are you going to plan for this and make adaptations or accommodations or considerations? So these are some of the basic things, right? So rules. We all have rules. We all hope that people follow the rules. And it's important to let people know what the rules are. If your rule is don't touch the art, that's an okay rule, and you just need to make it clear. But what are those rules that you can relax a little bit? If it's no food in the galleries, well, maybe on this day it could be, or are you able to quickly point them to a space where they can go eat? Is there a part of your theater that you can create sort of a shush-free zone? We want to welcome you, we mean you, and it's okay to come in and make noise. There's a lot of, fear and anxiety on the side of the family as well. They know that it's hard for their kids to go out, and they know that their kids may or may not have a quote-unquote outburst or a breakdown or something, or make noises that most of us wouldn't make, and on a regular basis. And so they're used to being stared at and felt made to be feel unwelcome. So you want to say that that's okay. You want to maybe allow some movement during the performance. Maybe don't sell out your theater for this show, so that there's extra spaces, extra seating available, where you can spread out your bag. You can move during the performance if you need to get up and go to the lobby for some quiet time. You want to think about the lighting. You know, does it need to be up a little higher so it's, you know, not super dark, or does it need to be a little lower so it's not super bright? You need to be aware of, you know, where those entry and exit points are. If somebody needs to make a quick getaway, you want to help them get there quickly. You want to, if you can, maybe you make your restrooms that day family restrooms. If you don't have one set aside, because moms and dads and kids, and they're all going all over the place and they all go together, and so you just want to let them go where they need to go. You want to try to use some of that extra signage. You know, the more pictures that you can provide and more people that are there to help direct you, volunteers, things like that, then it's going to be a nice situation for people. This whole iPad, iPhone thing, you know, people with autism and other disabilities, you know, a lot of assistive technology will come into your space if you start, you know, encouraging and welcome these folks. I mean, we're all now used to people with their iPads getting, you know, 6 inches away from a piece of art trying to take a picture. So it's not as different now, but you will see different types of assistive technologies, and you just need to be okay with them, because that might be how someone communicates. You might also want to think about your ticket policy. Now, I am not saying you need to refund tickets if someone needs to leave, but could you offer them a ticket to come back? So for some people with autism, they might be there for 5 minutes and it did not work. Even with all the prep, it did not work out for that family for that day for whatever reason, and they have to leave 10 minutes into the performance. Could you invite them to come back to the next one for free, or refund their ticket? People with disabilities and with autism and families are, you know, financial needs are a concern, but if there's a space where they feel welcome, then they're willing to pay for it. So you don't have to do everything for free, but can you work with them if something changes? And I think importantly is to not change the artistic intent. Just adapt it. So first of all, you can't really change, you know, there are licensing and copyright issues related to theater and things like that, and what the artist says is okay and not okay. But rather than changing it, can you think of a way to, you know, if there's going to be a loud bang during the show, can you visually cue everyone before it's going to happen so that they know that it's going to happen? Don't feel like you need to change it. A docent does not need to change anything that they would talk about during a tour. They just, you know, because interests are interests, but you just maybe need to phrase it a little differently or step it down, which actually takes me right on to my next slide. You want to, you know, start slowly. You can maybe, you know, things are all the same, regular content's the same. Just sort of adjust that standard approach a little bit. Keep your questions simple. Slow down and wait for them to respond. Find out what they are interested in. Don't be surprised if you ask a question and nobody responds to you. That's okay. One of the really big tools around autism is first this, then this. So first we're going to brush our teeth, and then we are going to bed. First we are going to finish our broccoli, and then you can have dessert. So tools like that you can adapt to your space can be really helpful. Time, we talked about changes in schedules. So if something changes and you're going to close early that day, make sure to let people know. If you have to cut a tour short, you know, let people know that this is going to be a shorter than average tour. Be okay with people coming and going from a tour. Learn skills around redirection. which is good for both somebody with autism and for other guests. So if somebody with autism is really focused, be like, yes, that's nice, but first let's do this, or let's go over here. And if other guests are giving you a hard time about someone, maybe you can redirect their interest somewhere and think about, how they could come back. And this last bit about know the distance, it goes back to that entry-exit point of, helping people get to where they need to be. And don't just point and say, go down that hall, but maybe you could guide them a little bit. Some tangible things that are very helpful are tip sheets. I have some examples, so I won't spend long here. Tip sheets, sensory maps that point out loud or crowded areas. Social stories we'll also definitely talk about in a minute. Visual schedules is sort of that same idea of the first then situation. And lots of you can provide a lot of information in advance to people that will help them as they prepare and expedite their process getting into the space. Once they're in the space, it's really important that your staff and volunteers are those friendly, welcoming people, right? So this is actually a picture of Kappa ushers, and when they started doing sensory-friendly stuff, they went to their docent pool and volunteer pool, or usher pool, I'm sorry, and asked if people had a connection to disability or to autism or special education background. And then they pulled those people and made them the leaders because they were on board with this. If somebody is not interested in adapting themselves, then they probably shouldn't be scheduled to volunteer for that session. And that's okay. If they don't want to do it, that's all right. Just find the people who are. Empower them. And then also train them. We'll talk in a minute, but VSA Ohio can help you with that. But try to train the whole and let the whole, institution know what's going to happen so that they're all prepared. And all of this is going to reduce that overstimulating sensory environment. It's going to reduce those unexpected surprises and that anxiety that comes with it. There's also a lot of preparation that goes on the family side. This is a description of a friend of mine, a colleague, and her son, and how they prepare for a visit. So they dress up. They make sure he dresses up so that he knows it's a special occasion. They focus on what they're bringing. So this kid usually travels with like 3 different bags full of art, and he has to only bring 1 bag when he comes. They'll often go preview the venue, look at it, park there, maybe just step inside one time and then leave right away, because that was it. They're working their way up. They talk about it. They look at the website. He knows to bring his favorite snacks. And they also take a lot of pictures to make it feel like a special event, because the arts are a special event for everyone. But know that as much as you are preparing, the family on the other end is preparing too. I have a few examples of some great things happening around Ohio. The Decorative Arts Center in Lancaster has recently launched some sensory-friendly tours. They have created social stories both for the museum itself, so when you come to the museum, this is what you can expect, and for their art classes, what it's like to take an art class there. So thinking about a couple of different things. They have chosen to open an hour early once a month, and then are happy to do special tours on Mondays when they're closed so that it's not as busy. This is COSI's sensory-friendly map. You can imagine that Center of Science and Industry is kind of a loud, overwhelming place if you have never been there. So they worked to identify those really loud areas and those more quiet areas so that if I'm there and I need to go somewhere, I just know that my son's not going to handle the large areas. We're just going to avoid it, and that's great. They have also invested in a calming room So it's now available for folks to use and to go and to chill out and relax and calm down from the loudness. They have a few different videos about what it's like to visit COSI so that people can prepare in advance. We may not all be able to build a calming room, but are there spaces in your in your building that are quieter than others that you can help direct people to? The Cincinnati Museum has also launched some sensory-friendly experiences. They have these really cool visual guides. So this is things that could happen when someone is in the space, and they hand these out to people so they can sort of check them off like a game and prepare at the same time. It's a really fun way to let people know what to expect. And importantly, things you might do. You don't have to do all of those things. If you tell them they have to, then they will do it. This is the Columbus Children's Theater, who has done some really amazing work with sensory-friendly performances, going from a season to now 2 shows for every main stage show are sensory-friendly. And they have done a lot of those adjustments that I talked about, having that judgment-free zone and really marketing the fact that they are judgment-free, and yes, we mean you. They have also created a very simple social story that is just, this is the outside, this is where you'll park, these are the people that will take your tickets, this is where your seat is. You can find that on their website. You can also go to YouTube. We don't have time to watch this, but they worked with some students on a project. I think it was a capstone project, and one of them had a sibling with autism. And so they put together this really great video about what a visit to the Columbus Children's Theater is like. So it's great preparation material. The New Albany Symphony, actually that was, I think New Albany Symphony was the first sensory-friendly performance that I went to, and I have to tell you, I loved it. I loved being able to move my seat when I found out somebody was there that I knew. I loved being able to open my granola bar when I was hungry and not worry about being shushed. And, you know, the cool thing that they did was after their first, I think after their first one, they had a meeting afterwards with the director, Heather Gardner, with the artistic director, with some of the kids that were in the performance, with myself and a couple of other autism-based community organizations, and they really talked about the entire performance and what worked well and what didn't. And I loved that the artistic director was jumping in and was super excited to do that. I'm getting close on time here. There's so much exciting to say. So they have great stuff happening there. The Victoria Theater Association has done a lot of sensory-friendly work as well. They have a social narrative. They have checklists, helpful hints, and you can find this all on their website really easily, which is an important component. They also have this really great helpful hints from the Cat in the Hat. So the Cat in the Hat is their, the enforcer, right, or the suggester, and that's going to really work well with kids and folks with different disabilities. And the cat is saying, here are your rules, and that's great. I loved this piece because the rules are important, and it's important to continue to make sure that that you include those, because that is part of the experience of the real world as well. VSA Ohio has recently launched some cultural access consulting work, so we've gone to a number of different places and done trainings with their staff. We went, for example, to the Decorative Arts Center and talked to them about what autism in the space is, to work to train them. We also went through some scenarios with them, because I think that's what people get most afraid of is, oh my gosh, what if this happens? I'm actually going to ask you about the second one. So let's pretend that if we came to your space, we would work this out with you. We take your questions. We work through what what you can do, what maybe you shouldn't do, and some other best practices. And I will be sure to send this to Christy if I haven't already, so she can send it to all of you, because I know we're going quick at the end here, and then you'll have this information. But let's pretend your gallery is hosting a sensory-friendly day, and everything's going great until one of the kids with autism bumps a sign, which leads to, you know, this collapse, and suddenly it falls and it damages a piece of artwork. So I can, you know, everybody's always like afraid that kids with autism or people with disabilities are going to touch something or not follow the rules or X, Y, or Z. And I have to tell you that there are plenty of adults without disabilities who do not follow the rules, who try to touch the artwork, who, you know, don't listen. So my recommendations and what I ask you to think about is, when you say what would I do, is, well, what would you do if anyone damaged a piece of art? You're probably not going to sue them for it, you know. And the only difference is, you know, trying to be calm about it, right? Like, you don't want to make the situation worse if that person is upset and suddenly everybody on the tour is upset and the guard, you know, the aides are upset. So how can you redirect that attention, and just think about, you know, what you would do if that happened to anyone. Does that mean that you need to maybe review how the space is put together, or what sort of signs that you have that if it falls, it breaks a piece of art? So just think broadly for all of these things, and think calmly and flexibly. Think about us as you are looking to build these. We want to be a resource for you. We've done a number of trainings and can tailor, consult on access statements, all kinds of things. We're also hosting an Arts and Autism conference again in October, where there will be a lot of best practices and networking and partnerships to be had. So we hope you'll visit us there. And I will leave you with asking you about the experience, because that's what we care about, right? We want people to have a good experience. And so what is that for you and your staff? What is it for the person with autism? And what is it for the caregiver who's trying to be there and facilitate this experience for their loved one? And then think about how we are expanding that welcome mat to welcome all different types of people. And remembering that, you know, accessibility is progress, and that you may take those baby steps and not everything may go exactly as you hoped, but you can always try again. And I think I made it with a couple minutes left. So if there are any questions in the chat box or later, I would be very happy to answer them.
Great. Thank you, Erin. That was a great presentation, giving us really good practical hands-on things to try. I love what you said about experimenting. Just try something and see how it goes. Take baby steps. Start where you are. If you have questions, please type them in the question box. I'm monitoring those, and we'll take just a couple. We have just a couple minutes. And I always think, Erin, when I hear you talk, that, you know, what we do for people with disabilities is good for everybody. It's just the right way to do business.
Right. You know, if I had never been to your space before, and when I go somewhere, I look at the website, I look at Google Maps, I'm looking at Google Earth to see where I can park and how I get in. I want to know how to get somewhere. So by creating something like a social story or a welcome video or adding more details to the Visit Us section of your website is going to help everyone. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Same, right? And now we have technology that lets us do that, to see where that building is and where the front door is and where do I park and all of that.
Right.
So, yeah, just make it easy for people for sure. All right, well, we are, go ahead.
Nope, I'm good.
You're good. All right, we are right at 3 o'clock, and we like to run these begin and end on time. So with that, We will thank you, Erin, again for this wonderful presentation very much. We've recorded it. We'll put it up in a week or so on our YouTube channel, and I'll let you all know when that happens so you can watch it. There are actually about 12 of our webinars out there now, so there's a whole library of resources for you to access if you missed some over the last year. And we just hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks for joining us. Bye-bye.
Good luck.